The Seattle Sounders' brand new 2025 kit is here. Inspired by two traditional Southern Coast Salish weaving techniques, twilling and twinning. These techniques, passed down through generations, honor the resilience, deep-rooted ties, and creativity that define the cultural fabric of this region. The striking deep blue jersey will be worn by the Sounders for the next 2 seasons to honor the club's deep connection with the Puget Sound and shared responsibility as stewards of the greater Salish Sea watershed. Backing up that commitment, the Seattle Sounders will donate up to $50,000 to benefit community charities around the Puget Sound region. To get your very own Salish Sea kit, visit lobbingscorchers.com/kit. That's lobbingscorchers.com/KIT.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome in to another episode of Lobbing Scorchers Kickoff. I'm Ari. That's Nico. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be talking some Seattle Sounders. We're going to review some CONCACAF Champions Cup. We're going to talk about match day 4 at St. Louis. We're going to preview this weekend's Nico Lodeiro revenge game at Lumen Field. But folks, before we get into all that, you might have seen from the title, but we've got a very special guest joining the show here this morning, and we're going to launch right into that off the top. But before we bring him in here, Nico, just how are you doing this morning, man?
Hey, man, just excited about our guest, excited about all the topics that we're about to embark. It might not be the greatest feel-good pod show that you might think of, because as you look outside and there seem to be clouds and rain, that's kind of the forecast that we've felt with the Sounders lately. It seems like when it rains, it pours, but, we're going to get into all of that. But of course, first of all, we'll start with our guest of honor here.
Let's bring him on right now, folks. It is not every day that we get an MLS legend on the show, but that's exactly what we got for you this morning. Let's bring him in right now. We've got former New England Revolution legend, MLS veteran, should have been the 2014 MLS MVP in my opinion, and current Seattle Reign assistant coach, Lee Nguyen, joining the show. Lee, thank you so much for the time and joining us this morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We are very excited to talk to you about some NWSL here this morning. So let's just jump right into it, because Seattle Reign NWSL season is underway. It was a 1-1 draw versus Gotham at Lumen Field to open the season. Emery Adames with a scrappy second half equalizer. That goal was all heart, force of will. But Lee, your first season as an assistant with the Reign here, first game, what did you think of the performance from the team? What are the things that you liked? What are the things that you feel like the team needs to work on as you get into your season here?
Yeah, I think, I was really excited to come here. This is a big soccer city. The fans were great. They really helped us push to get the result we needed. But this is an exciting roster, exciting team, and being able to be a part of this coaching staff with Laura, who's probably the most successful coach in this league. And so I'm all excited and happy about that. But from the game, yeah, I think you can see there's progress to be made, but we played against a really tough team, who I think showed they were one of the best teams last year and the year before that, and so being able to get a result against, you can say, a top 4 team, was good for us to show the grit we had. But I think we can be a little bit better in the final third. Maybe a little bit more quality. And so hopefully, I can help them with that this year.
Yeah, that was my takeaway. One of my takeaways as well was that Gotham, they look like they're going to be quite a force this year. Based on what you've seen so far, Lee, in preseason in that first game, how would you describe the Seattle Reign identity? What is it that the coaching staff is trying to impart on the club right now? Stylistically, how do you want to see this team play this year?
Yeah, I think, we have a good balance of veterans and young players. And so being able to, with that experience, control games from start to finish. But then you have young players who, they like to go 1v1. They like to be dynamic. And so being able to push teams in the final third towards the end of the game. But yeah, trying to control games in possession, trying to play more in the opposing team's half, ideally. These are the things I think, we're trying to impose against other teams. And so you saw a little bit of it against Gotham, but again, they're the same team. They want to control possession. And so it was about a 50-50 battle from what I saw in that game. But hopefully we can be a little bit more opposing going forward.
Yes. Look, I'm very interested in hearing a little bit more about how you got into NWSL, right? When you hear MLS legend and you know who you are as a player, it kind of feels like, oh, maybe the simple route or the thought might have been that you would have gone into coaching in the MLS side, as someone that, has a young daughter that was at the game, that really appreciates, a coach like yourself to come in and try to help and grow the game from your perspective, from your position. How did you get into that? How was that decision of going, hey, this is the way I want to go, this is the route and what I want to do with my coaching career?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It wasn't like I chose one path or the other. It really happened during, I was in Vietnam playing. Our season got canceled because of COVID. So I came back to the States, and during that time, I, wanted to see if I was going to enjoy coaching, right? Because I was in the tail end of my career trying to transition. And so I asked my old club in Dallas, the Dallas Texans. I asked the director there, hey, can I help coach one of your teams? And he gave me a U17, U16 girls team. And so I was just kind of coaching them for that first couple months, and it was fun. I really enjoyed coaching them. They were really eager to learn. But, I was going through training sessions of like, what I was doing at MLS, what I was doing, for my pro days. And then I realized I need to bring it back a little bit, realizing, like how we were training, maybe the grid size were too small. I need to make it a little bit bigger. And so all these things I was learning just through those experiences. I was enjoying that process. And then I got the call to see if I wanted to come and help the Spirit. During that time, they had a transition in coaching. They needed an assistant coach. And I said, yeah, let me try this out. But this was more so if I want, again, just an experience. I wanted to see if I liked it. But at the end of the season, I was going to go back to playing in Vietnam. And we ended up going and finishing out the year and winning the championship. And they're like, no, you got to come back. And so
Nice.
And so that was a decision I needed to make, was like, do I continue playing or do I go on this coaching journey now? And so that's kind of how it all started.
I love that. See, that's exactly what I wanted to get into, man. And I can just see you light up when you talk about it, and that's exactly why the question went there. And what's been some of the challenges that you've kind of came across when you've had that transition of everything that you've learned and throughout your career, and then kind of try to mold that into either coaching style or coaching concepts, and then bring that into the NWSL?
Yeah, I think what was great was, like as you get older in your playing career, you realize, as younger players come up, they look up to you, they've seen you play, they start to follow you a little bit. And so you kind of, organically mentor these players, and I found a lot of joy in that. And it gave me purpose, as a player when I was, going through that transition. And so naturally, you transition into coaching, you kind of do the same thing, right? And so now you're trying to mentor and teach these young players, and through your experiences and through the things you see. And I think that really gave me purpose and joy to see and help, young players grow and get them to achieve their goals.
Lee, your playing career has taken you all over the world. You've played in the Netherlands, you've played in Denmark, Vietnam. You did lengthy stints in MLS, and then looking at your managerial career, you've already been a coach for the Washington Spirit, Kansas City Current, Angel City SC. Now your path has led you here to Seattle. How did this opportunity in particular come about for you? And what do you just think of the city and the community and the soccer scene so far in your kind of first experience being a part of it on a day in, day out basis?
Yeah, I think, as I was trying to figure out my next journey, my next chapter, I wanted to be a part of a winning culture. I wanted to be a part of a team that, has a chance to compete for trophies, and also be with the staff that, I can collaborate with and learn from. And I think, the Seattle Reign checks all those boxes. And like I said before, like when I came here as a player, I realized how big of a sports city this is, how much they love their soccer. Saw Sounders jerseys all through the cities. And so being part of a city that embraces soccer and loves the sport, and, you saw it in the home opener. Like doesn't matter rain or shine. Like the fans are coming, they come to support the team, and so that was really cool, and I'm happy to be a part of that.
Yeah, well, we're thrilled to have you a part of it as well. I just got one more on my end, and then Nico, you can get in one more, and then we'll let you go. We know that you got soccer to coach. I did want to ask you about your playing career. I have a lot of memories of you as a player. Obviously, my first year covering the Sounders was actually 2014, and that was the year that you were just going off. Like the whole thing that year was who should be MVP, Robbie Keane or you? And I'm not even just saying this because you're on the show, but I was always on the side of the argument that it should be you, because like if you looked at it, Robbie Keane, he had like slightly better stats than you. I think he had more assists, but your goals that year, I think you had like 10 game-winning goals. It was like every week I would look up and it was like Lee Nguyen did it again. Like he scored another game-winning goal. I'm so curious when you're having, like, you didn't quite get MVP, but that was clearly an MVP caliber season. You got to be in some kind of crazy type of zone to be having a season like that. Like, how would you describe that season for you? And just it like that must have been a crazy feeling of like nobody can stop me. Like, what was that like, that whole stretch for you?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, like, you find yourself in that flow, and you just find yourself being in the right place at the right time. And so, yeah, a lot of it had to do with, the mindset, and then just being confident that, yeah, like you're just in that flow, like continue to ride it. But, I had a great team that year, and the teammates were really supportive. And, it was one of those things where we were in the final third, my teammates would try to find me, right? And I just needed to get open. And, I think through that, just saying, hey, like, you try to, it's so funny, but it's like when the player's hot, feed them, right? Like in the basketball, like if the player's hot, feed them. So like, that's what like Jermaine was trying to tell players, like, hey, give Lee the ball. And so, yeah, it was one of those things. It's just like, hey, the player's hot, give them the ball, find your best players in the final third, let them do their thing, let them be creative, let them create, and then just get open for them. And so, I try to do that as a player, and, as a coach, you try to put, your best players in the final third and let them create, let the quality show. And at the end of that year, it just all clicked. So.
I got one serious one not so much real, not very complex, but how's it been working with Laura? I mean, she looks like she's business all the time, and asking her a question alone just the other day, I was like, man, she's serious. How's that been? How's that been working, the dynamic with her? And then the short one I did want to ask you was, what's been your favorite thing about Seattle as a city? You've been able to, be here for a little bit. What have you liked about the city?
Yeah, no, Laura's amazing. She has really good banter, and yeah, she looks like she's business, but she's real chill. and we collaborate really well as a staff. And yeah, she gives you a lot of ownership, and there's a lot of experience, and so like we're able to bounce ideas off of each other, and I'm learning a lot already. But she's the winningest coach in the NWSL, so like it's so cool to be able to work with her and learn from her. And all the players, they all love and respect her. So like it's so cool to kind of see how she manages all these players here. But I think what's great about Seattle as well, everyone tells me the summers are unmatched. So I'm waiting to see that bit. I can already tell when the sun comes out, it's a beautiful city, and so I'm waiting for the warmer weather so you can be a little bit more, do more outdoor activities.
Lee,
Great, man.
real
Thank
quick before we get you out of here, if you had to maybe name a player on the Seattle Reign that fans might not know about or doesn't get like a lot of attention, but is sort of an unsung hero, maybe a dirty work player or a player that doesn't get the credit that they might deserve, is there anyone that comes to mind on that criteria?
I mean, we have a lot of good young players coming up. I mean, we have, you already know Emery Adames, who scored, Ainsley's one of the, if not our youngest player. She's another up and coming player that's really good. But, I think Maddie Darlene, you'll hear her name a lot this year. She's a rookie. I think she can battle for Rookie of the Year. But she's somebody who I think many people might not know from the NWSL, but she had a really good career at UNC. And so I'm excited to see what she'll be able to bring to the pros now.
Lee, thank you so much for joining the show this morning. We really appreciate the time. Good luck with everything this year. We're going to be following the season. We'll have to get you back on again sometime and catch up at another juncture. But for now, thanks again. Good luck and appreciate you, man.
No, absolutely. It was fun. Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem. Good luck.
Thanks, Lee. That was Lee Nguyen, everybody. MLS legend and Seattle Reign assistant. Great interview there. Got some good insight on the Reign season in the NWSL, and we're going to be doing as much NWSL coverage as we can this year. It's good. It's kind of an exciting year for the Reign. I was at their season launch event before the season started, and just the vibe around the team, Nico, like it had a vibe of like a fresh start, like sort of like a new era. They had the anthem. They were kind of doing like new branding. So it's exciting. I really encourage everybody to go out to those games because there's some real superstar players that you see in the NWSL week in, week out. And it's phenomenal to watch. Nico, before we move on to Sounders stuff, any final takes on Reign, NWSL, or our interview with Lee Nguyen?
Hey, man, he was fantastic, man. You could just tell someone who really enjoys what he does. And every single question, right, he had this big aura about him. And that's the type of coach that you want around. I love that, he was able to, hey, but Laura is all business, but, she's actually pretty chill. That's, those are news to me. She seems so like on the ball about it. And look, quite honestly, I'd like to follow it up a little bit more. I'm not as in sync with the Reign, obviously, with the Sounders. We were just talking about that I barely have time to watch La Liga or EPL or anything. And there was one point where I did want to get more into covering the Reign at one point, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago when we first started Pulso, but it was kind of difficult back then. It was good to hear at the last merger meeting that we had that they were going to be a lot more forward and helpful with media. So maybe I got to give it a second shot, see if we can get somebody out there to cover the team, because I am excited about it.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm hoping as well. They did used to make it more difficult than it should have been, but yeah, great to have Lee Nguyen on here, man. He was such a good player. Like I think people forget, but yeah, like from 2014 to 17, he was one of the best players in the league, and it was fun getting to ask him about that 2014 year because that really yeah, like he said, it's like a basketball player that just is heat checking and just hits every time. And that was like the type of season that he had. So it was fun to get to pick his brain on that in addition to the rain stuff. All right, Nico, let's jump into our Seattle Sounders coverage. We have not laid one of these shows down since CONCACAF Champions Cup. I'll be honest, I don't want to spend that much time on that. I feel like we're far enough away where we can just pretty much move on from that. But they're back to league action, and it was a 1-0 loss at St. Louis City SC. And Nico, I would say the vibes right now are they're pretty down. The Champions Cup game was a letdown, and I think the injuries have got people feeling pretty down. They got me feeling pretty down. And then you look at that St. Louis game, and it looked like a team that was injured and fatigued. I don't know about you. I'm optimistic that once they get their legs back under them a little bit, like it'll look better than it did in St. Louis. But I guess just to start, man, like how are you feeling about the team standing right now, just after that Champions Cup exit, and with this injury situation is not good. It's not.
Yeah, it's hard to be optimistic. I tip my hat to you for staying somewhat positive, because I mean, it seemed like anything that could have gone wrong went wrong and more, between the loss, the manner of the loss, just a team that looked out of sorts, disjointed, unable to play their own game, the injuries, the long term of certain injuries like the one of Paul Arriola. And then on top of that, going into the training week, you lose Yammer Gomez Andrade to a personal reason. Brian Smetzer's sick. He can't make the trip. I mean, it seemed like it just kind of snowballed from the point of that. From Tuesday on, it just snowballed. So it has not been great. The big clouds are looming on top of the Sounders, as I said, between the injury plague and everything that really came out of that Cruz Azul game. It has been pretty down from there.
Yeah. What did you make of so Noah and I, we have a new pod coming out, but we were talking about Jesus Ferreira and just how that's going so far. And I think, like, for me, the way I see it, I was actually legitimately encouraged and happy with how he was playing to start the season. It seemed like he was fitting in well just as a facilitator. The goal scoring hadn't come yet. But I feel like in this game, didn't it look like frustration sort of reached the boiling point? And he was kind of wilding out there, wasn't he? Like, what did you make of that?
He looked like a player out of place, to be honest. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I said that right off the bat. He just seemed like a player that had not gotten repetitions up there. There was a feel of, even when whether it was in transition or whether it was in possession, he just looked out of place. And that's not something that you're used to seeing from a player like Jesus Ferreira, with his trajectory, with his understanding of the game. So that was concerning. The frustration was clearly there, and it's probably all tied in together, right? If me as a player, I know how good I am, and I'm sure he feels it. I know that I felt like that, and I'm no pro, but there were times where I was either playing off a position or of a new team, and you're not getting the ball where you wanted. You were not able to influence the game in the capacity that you're used to, and that becomes frustrating. Now you're playing a St. Louis team that was out physically, and your team everywhere. I mean, they were coming straight at you, like beating you into submission. And there was that point where I think he gets into it with Kessler. I think that's who he got it into with, and he got
into it with like two different guys. There was one point there was a red card check because it looked like he jabbed a guy in the stomach. He got a yellow card for shoulder checking a guy, and then crashed out on the ref because he got that yellow. And, he was saying that wasn't called earlier, but like, to me, I'm like, I don't know how you're shocked that was a yellow. Like, to me, like, not the needing to develop chemistry and it taking time to fit in and adapt on a new team. That's not crazy to me. I think that's normal. In fact, like it would be nice for a player like that to be able to slot right in and look like the best version of themselves right away. That's not always how it works. So like I don't mind that aspect of it, to be honest with you. If that was the only issue, I'd be like, it's fine. He doesn't look fully acclimated yet, but I'm willing to give it time to see that. But like for me, what was the troubling or the concern, I guess, coming out of it was like the body language stuff, the demeanor, the like when you're getting into it with other players off the ball, you're taking focus away from winning the game, right? So like that's really the issue. It's not even like getting on him for his attitude as much as it is like when you're doing that stuff, like your focus needs to be like on the on trying to score goals, does it not?
Yeah, so there's two sides to that coin, and I agree with you that you are affecting the game in a negative way for the purposes of winning that particular game, and that's true. And his frustration got so much of a hold of him that I even think that when he was able to get on the ball, he either had a bad touch or he was a little bit too rushed with it. But on the other side, I will say that I would much rather have a player that is frustrated that he's not having a good game because he gives a shit, rather than somebody that maybe came on, walked the field, jogged it, looked around, looked disinterested, and is like, okay, I'm getting subbed off. Let me just jog off, get on, X or Facebook or whatever you're trying to do.
Right.
And he didn't do that, right? You could tell he cared. And I feel like the frustration was because he couldn't influence the game. So that gives me at least a little bit of hey, this guy cares. He clearly knows that he had a bad game in a position that he probably has been wanting to play for a long time. Because if there was something that we knew, is that when he first came on, the very first presser, he talked about wanting to play up top and wanting to get behind defenders and all of these things that he hasn't been able to do. So that probably goes into more of the frustration. This is my opportunity to be that 9, to be up there, play where I want to play, and I have an awful game. So yes, there's like I said, two sides to that coin. Definitely not what you wanted to see, but at the same time, at least he cared enough to be frustrated.
It's a fine line, isn't it? Like Clint Dempsey was a guy for many years who towed that line, right? And like with Clint, it was always a thing where I feel like playing angry is sort of like what made him tick. Whenever I watched him play, he played like a guy that was, that grew up in Nacogdoches and was like doing and playing those games, like growing up, he never really like lost that dog mentality, which that is a good thing, but he crossed the line at times too. Like we saw that a lot of times. So like you just got to know how to channel that, and you got to be smart. I feel like I felt like there was moments in that game where Ferreira was like teetering on that edge a little bit, and hopefully he continues to get acclimated. He's going to be a very key part of this team coming up for the next few weeks here. Nico, got a question in chat for you from Reese. He says, what is Nico's opinion on our squad depth now?
I still think it's solid. I mean, you saw the starting lineup with as many injuries as you had. That's a very competitive squad. You did give St. Louis a fight. You were not good on offense. You didn't put them under duress enough. You didn't test the keeper, which without Berkey, you're thinking that was job number 1, and you weren't able to do it. But you had a decent enough squad to just hold off a 1-0 goal against one of the better playing teams right now, a defense that has yet to give up a goal. You get beat on and I hate to use the word anomaly, because now it feels like we're talking about one of these a game, but Jackson slips, gets on the ball on accident. There's a free kick. Nguyen puts it perfectly paced and placed to where Steph can't get there. So in terms of depth, I still think that they're good. I mean, it's not what you want to see out of a team that the whole way this was pitched, right? The whole 2025 season was about hitting the floor running, having enough depth to be in every single competition, and that your floor was as high as it's ever been. And if you don't feel like that's what's happening, then you have every right to feel that way, because it hasn't. You just got bounced off CCC in the worst possible way. You've yet to really win a game with the team that's fully not rotated against you in MLS, and you're frustrated. So in terms of depth, to answer the question without all of this, because that's just the way I handle business with just this whole, rant. But I think the depth still holding. This was your first stress test. That's the way I put it on Friday with Jeremiah. Let's see how it plays out here on out, because it's not going to get any easier moving forward, with the exception of maybe not playing Wednesday games and all of that. Obviously, that opens up your schedule a little bit, but the competition, you got some really quality teams moving forward. So first test, they did okay. Let's see how they do against Houston and moving forward after that.
Yeah, I mean, I liked the starting 11 in Houston, or not in Houston, in St. Louis. Georgie and Paul Rothrock, those are going to be guys that are tasked with carrying the load now. Rothrock has heated up, I think, after a slow start to the season coming off the injury. I thought Georgie looked great. So my opinion on the depth is that, look, are they going to be playing at a shield pace? Are they going to be racking 2 points per game with the injuries that they have right now? Probably not, but I think a reasonable expectation is that this team, with the players that they have available right now, should be able to play at around a 1.5 points per game pace as a baseline. And I know that might not sound exciting to people, and it's not exciting, but I think the reality is that, like, it's not just the injuries piled up, it's who the injuries hit. I mean, it's your best number 9, your most creative attacker, and a guy in Paul Arriola who was going to play a huge role on the team this year. So with all that in mind, I'm not expecting them to play at the pace that I might have before the injuries, but especially like you said, without the fixture congestion, like, I think they should be able to keep it around 1.5. Do you think that's reasonable?
Man, right now it's some long division, man, because you're talking about a home game that won't be easy, and then you get a 3-game road trip against San Jose, against a very good San Diego team, at FC Dallas. I mean, this is as hard as it's going to get. So can they do it? Yes, they definitely have the potential to do so. Can I sit here in front of you and our audience and tell you that I'm very confident that that's what's going to happen? I can't say that because of how things have played out for this team. The potential is there, but there needs to be a huge improvement, specifically to fit and get Jesus Ferreira ready to go. He was your big acquisition. He was the guy that was supposed to come here and put you from being a team that was an elite defense with some issues in the attacking end to being a balanced team. And we haven't seen that, unfortunately, because of how everything has played out for Ferreira. And this was my biggest frustration. You and I have talked about it, and we have discussed it consistently. What was going on with Jesus? Why wasn't he playing X amount of minutes? Why had he not been the first option to replace Jordan Morris? It was always Moose. It was always someone else. You have not put Ferreira necessarily in the best position to have a successful game against St. Louis, in my opinion, in my humble opinion. So how do they move forward? How do they get him right? That's going to be a huge component on whether what you're saying plays off as you wanted to play because of the potential of this team, or if you just have a real rough road trip, because these are not easy teams. San Jose is not San Jose of old. They've looked fantastic, or at least dangerous. Obviously, they didn't get the win last, but they look dangerous enough. San Diego's been a solid team, very good, obviously know how to get results. And then FC Dallas, I mean, that's not going to be an easy game. So that is exactly what this team needs to see. And this is what's really going to set that bar on where whether you and I and every pundit that literally put the Sounders at number 2 this season in the Western Conference or first or whatever because of that depth, were we right, were we wrong? I mean, it we'll still see where that goes.
The Ferreira thing is such a huge part of all of it, right? Like, honestly, if in a hypothetical world where they're able to get him integrated and going and playing and producing closer to what he did at FC Dallas, I think that doesn't solve every problem, but it would sure help.
It's a big one.
Like, I guess, what's your take on what they need to do to make that happen? Because I think the issue right now is that his best fit with this team is still up in the air. They've been playing him a lot deeper than I would have thought. And it seemed like even though he was listed as the starting number 9 at St. Louis, he was dropping kind of deep again. And it just feels like they haven't quite figured it out yet. There was a couple sequences where they were trying to spring him through with through balls like he's Jordan Morris. He's not Jordan Morris. What do you think needs to happen going forward to get the most out of him?
It's repetition there. It literally, and me, I asked him this question, and I've been harping on this with Brian, with Ferreira. I was even, we had a comment that criticized because we had that joint press conference with the Rain and the Sounders, and they're like, oh, well, or you're just asking just Sounder questions. I was like, well, that's kind of my agenda. And in that particular press conference, you could see it in his eyes. I asked him about how difficult was it to get chemistry when he wasn't getting competitive minutes at the position and with certain players. And he said, yeah, it's difficult. It's not the same to practice than it is to play a competitive game. So I think you got to re-emphasize your game plan on Ferreira, get him confident, get him with the right chemistry, and see what makes him tick up there. Because you said it perfectly. I mean, he was not just dropping deep. Even when he was in the right position, there was one, I don't know if it was a transition moment or not, where Rusnak is on the run. Ferreira is right in front of him. They're getting close to the 18. Ferreira makes a run. He doesn't get the ball there. He kind of comes back. Then Rusnak gives him the ball. He gets intercepted by a defender, and Ferreira kind of hits the ground. He's like, man, he just looked frustrated because there is no fluidity to the game. There is no consistency. There is a disconnect that was obvious there. So you got to get him all synced up, because to me, I still believe he has the talent to be a quality player, to be a more than quality player, to be that guy that you brought him on to be. But you really need to emphasize on who he is as a player and not just keep him in the backhand and say, hey, you're just some guy that I'm bringing in to play at Antigua. And you're not just some guy that I'm just bringing in the 64th minute, because that's not the way he was presented to us. And honestly, that's not the way that he should be treated, just on his potential alone. So you got to get him going.
I don't think there's any question that he has the talent. Like, I watched this guy on FC Dallas for many years. He's got 50 plus MLS goals for a reason. I think just the whole story with the team right now is they got to figure out how to unlock that, because the reality is you're dealing with 3 major injuries right now. And, I'm willing to accept that figuring out how to play without all those guys is going to be a little bit of a process. And it's early enough in the season where you theoretically have a little bit of time to figure that out, but like, time goes fast in this league, man. Like, you can't wait around forever to start racking points. And also, just in terms of vibes, like if they keep stacking poor results at the beginning of the season here, like, the vibes are going to deteriorate extremely fast, especially because, like you said, I think we were rightfully high on the potential that this team with this roster, like what they could do this year. So we'll see. We'll see if they figure it out. They're going to have to in short order. Let's get to a couple of questions in chat here. Just a reminder, guys, if you do make it, no obligation. But if you do make it a super chat, you're guaranteed to get your question or your observation read on the show. So I'm just saying.
And you help out, Lobbing Scorchers. You help out Ari, Nico, Noah.
Exactly.
You help us all out.
It is a great way to support the show. You could also become a new YouTube member. And also, if you haven't done so yet, like the video for sure. Boost us in the algorithm. First one from Jerome. He says, do Sounders ever really get beat, or do they beat themselves? There's been a lot, too much, Nico, I would argue, of beating themselves so far this year. But I'm interested to hear your take on the play in this game, because that free kick gets set up because of you could call it an individual error from Jackson Ragen in a season where he's had a few of them. I don't know about you, man. I have a hard time like blaming him super hard for this one. Like that, it's raining, the field is wet. He wasn't the only guy who slipped. He loses his footing. Like if it was an issue of decision making or like a challenge that he goes into that he shouldn't, like when he got the red card against Vancouver last year, that's one thing. In this situation, he slipped on a wet field at a really inopportune time, but I just don't know how much you can do about that. I don't know. How did you see that whole thing?
No, you can't blame him on this one. The problem is, though, not the blame, but that has been so consistent that there is a mistake. So the last one he had was obviously the pass into nowhere that leads to a goal, and that is on him. That is more on him. In this one, it isn't. But what is it that we're doing to not have this sort of moments happen so often, right? Because again, it's a mistake, not his fault at all. If anybody, maybe it's the kid guys, or because it wasn't just him. There was so many people slipping on the floor.
It was a slip and slide.
But it seemed like it was only the Sounder players. The Dallas players were on point. So did it not get adjusted where you got the right cleats on for the specific area that you're stepping on, right? The field, the wetness. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that go into choosing your cleats. So was that a thing? So it's not on him. I've also had a lot of criticism on Steph because of his position in there. I don't think that there's much he could do about it. There was so much pace.
Jesus Christ.
So much pace. It was well placed. You know, is he, the youngest version of Stephen Fry? No, but I don't even think that version gets there. I mean, he was just that difficult of a shot.
I gotta say, like, if you're blaming the goalkeeper on that one, like, this is sort of just like a philosophical thing of how you view the game. Like, for me, if you're blaming the goalkeeper on that one, you're pretty out to lunch. Like, the whole point of that play is like the defensive error that gives them that set piece in the first place. And if he hits one like that, he hits one like that. Like that you when you give up opportunities like that, you leave yourself susceptible to that happening. When you give their deep, that's, to me, watching St. Louis, that's like the one way that team can score is getting Edouard Lowen set pieces and just hoping he rips it in like that. I think that's the frustrating thing, is it's like that seemed like their one window for how they had a couple other good chances, but honestly, I thought the defense was pretty much it. But anyway, I hadn't seen people like getting on Steph Fry for that goal, but I think that is
I think it's because you left X.
Yeah,
I think
that's why I quit X.
You're on a better platform. That might be it. But look, honestly, again, I've always felt like fans can absolutely demand and have any opinion within themselves. All we can do here is just say, hey, look, that's an opinion for sure, but it's really difficult for a keeper. Yeah, it's difficult for a keeper to get there either way. It doesn't matter what version of that is. But, there were things in general that I thought Seattle just didn't do very well, and it could have been just a little bit of everything, but they really got passed through their press very easily, and if not easily, very firmly. I mean, St. Louis was able to just knock the ball through their press consistently. This team did hold possession, but it was kind of possession with a purpose. They obviously had the numbers and the statistics, which I don't really look too much into, but they did have more possession of the ball, but they just didn't look dangerous with it. Georgie was trying to do a lot. He really was trying to get through, but this is a difficult team that you were facing, and he just wasn't able to get anywhere. So he wasn't going necessarily vertically. He was going more horizontally with the ball at times, trying to get something going, which I appreciated from him. But it all goes back to that inability to break down a team. And it seemed like the sequences of passes were just not there. And it was similar to the Cruz Azul game, where maybe they had like 5-10 minutes where you're like, oh, they're going in with the right attitude. There's that type of tempo that I want, and then all of a sudden it's just like went away.
T Baby, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. Appreciate the support. Says like Suazo's hot take about Jesus Ferreira needing more. I can't quite remember what Suazo's Ferreira take exactly was. I remember like what instance when he was on the show that you're talking about, but
Who's Suazo?
He's we were doing a call-in show with the fans, and he's goated. He's our goated caller, I think.
Oh, I like it.
But T Baby, if you want to remind me of what the take you're referring to is, maybe I'll have more of a take on his take. Nico, Noah needs to hear your take on Albert Rusnak in this match. People were throwing a fit about his performance. Yeah, we talked about this on our game review, which will be coming out later today, I believe. But what do you make of the Rusnak discourse coming out of this game? I thought he played okay.
And that's just not good enough for certain people when it comes to Albert. And look, to be fair, and I said this going into the season, Albert Rusnak was going to have a huge microscope on top of him the entire season.
Always does.
A magnifying glass the size of the state of Washington, because of the discourse behind this Sounder team, this club deciding that he was going to be the guy and you were going to bring him back in. And for all the reasons that we don't need to recap that they did that for. So with that tag, there is a certain responsibility, and therefore, I'm okay. I thought that he played better in this one than he did at Cruz Azul. Now, in Cruz Azul, everybody was kind of bad, so maybe that's part of it. But when you're MIA and you're supposed to be the guy, because you are the guy, Jesus Ferreira was brought in as the new acquisition, but out of everybody that has responsibility in this team, when we talk about the DPs, Jordan, Pedro, Albert, who has responsibility is Albert. He needs to be the guy. So he's going to be criticized beyond anyone else on this team. So I'm okay with it. I'm okay with people wanting more from him. I don't know if I'm upset that he had a bad game, but am I happy that he didn't do more? No. I do expect more from him. He has to be that guy that if things aren't going well, hey, tough break. You're the guy that people are looking at. And that goes across anything. Look at MLS. Look at any big player. Things don't go well. They're wondering, where's Buanga? Where is Messi?
Exactly. Yeah.
Where is Latelat? Where, you're going to be looking for those players. And it comes with the job, man. It comes with the job. So I do wish that I saw more from Albert, but it's hard to ask that when the whole system looks out of sorts and there's no cohesiveness in your play. And that's kind of what you've been seeing Tuesday and Saturday. And that's my bigger concern. It's not necessarily Albert, it's that things have not looked cohesive.
I think it's totally fair to say, like, anytime your team gets shut out and your DP attacker was on the field the whole time, it's totally fair to say, like, you wish you would have got more out of him in that individual game. And like, I don't even disagree with that. I think the thing is, I never really agree with formulating a conclusion on a player based off one game. We had people in our chat after the game saying, see, he is bad, but like based on one game. But it's like, again, I don't want to spoil the pod that we have coming out, but like I could point to a lot of scenarios where he did come through just as easily. So like one instance a point doesn't prove. I don't know if that's an actual saying.
No, games are circumstantial as well. Yeah. And that's why it's so tough for me to get on board with that sort of thinking that, okay, there's one game, this is why this player's bad. No, it's on a broader spectrum. And that's exactly why I'm saying what I just kind of referred to, is the fact that, yes, he did kind of seem missing on the biggest game of 2025 so far at Estadio Olímpico Universitario, where you're kind of hoping that those top players are the ones that get this team through, and they didn't. So there's still a long season. He's still got plenty of times to prove otherwise.
Yep.
But again, to me, it goes beyond certain players. Same thing with Ferreira. Is just about what is it that's going on behind or before the game starts, the game planning, the how are we going to get these players where they need to be successful? That's always been Brian's thing, right? I need to put players in position to be successful. I don't know if that's been the case so far. A lot of people give Craig Weibel stuff and hey, this, that, and the other. It feels, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like this roster is better than what the record is so far in 2025. So where does that lead to? What is it that's going wrong with that?
I would agree that I definitely think the roster is better than their record in league play. I would even say like that lineup they put out in St. Louis, like I consider that an above average to good MLS lineup, maybe even a very good starting 11 on the right day. I think there is a simple reality in this league that when you are in CCC, your league form is going to suffer. Like it just is. I don't think I've ever seen a team fully escape that. There was the year a couple years ago where LAFC looked like they were still running the league, even though they were in CCC, and everyone was kind of like, "Oh, see, LAFC can do it." They didn't end up coming out of that well, man. Like this tournament, that's how it goes. And I think in a way, like it's obviously not great that they crashed out, but I think if you're going to crash out, it's better to do it at an earlier point than make a really deep run, withstand the physical and psychological and emotional toll that comes with that, and then crash out. I would rather just get out of there early. And now Seattle can kind of just lock back into the league. And I think their league form, we'll see if it does, but it should improve. Matt Sexton, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Really appreciate it. He's got a question for you, Nico. Nico, have you heard anything about the potential for bringing in a new signing earlier than the summer? Anything on the potential profile of the player?
It's a good question. And because you are a super chat, he was super chat, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, the team is looking for what I think will be Ferreira's replacement. I think that they'll definitely bring in a player before the end of this window. It's not going to be U22, so don't go there. But I think that the plan is to eventually put Paul Arriola in the end of season injury list and then bring in someone else. I have a couple of players that I think are both can be contributors. Again, none of these signings are gonna blow people's minds, and that's kind of where I want to make sure that I tame the expectations. But I think that you will get a good player that's gonna come in and provide those Paul Arriola expectations, which was consistency, experience, versatility. So those are the things that they're looking at. But I am almost certain that there will be a signing before the end of this transfer window.
Reese, Vancouver has escaped it for now. We'll see if my prediction would honestly be eventually the further they make it, like you're going to see it catch up to them a little bit. Maybe I'm wrong and the Whitecaps are just randomly the team that is able to like flawlessly juggle these two competitions. I doubt it. And Miami, yes, is doing it, but that doesn't count. Like, yes, Miami is able to do it, but Miami, like, the implication there is that the way to handle it is to sign literally Lionel Messi. Not every team is able to do that, especially because like it's not just Messi, it's the fact that he brought in the Barca boys and then that attracted every top prospect in South America to their team. So I really just don't even count Miami in some of these discussions because what they were able to do is just different fundamentally than what any MLS team has ever been able to do. So it's not that I don't think Miami can be the measuring stick. It is fair to point out though that Vancouver fared much better in CCC this year than Seattle. And yeah, no, they are 4-0-0 right now. So like take nothing away from that. I'm just skeptical at how long that's going to last. Jake says, why even make tournaments if you're okay crashing out in round two? It's not about being okay with crashing out in round two. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you're going to crash out at some point, that is like a better time for it to happen as it pertains to like being able to get your league form on track, you know, like a
Well,
team
hold
like
on.
this is what I was saying real quick. This is what I was saying on the last show is like LAFC, for instance, are not in good form right now. They have played one good game all season. They beat Columbus 3-0 in their first leg. Then they lost the second leg. They've lost 3 straight games across all comps. Some people took issue with this take on the last show. I really don't think that they're like I don't know if I would, if I was a fan of them, I would not necessarily even want to be in CCC right now. They have to play Miami where they're going to get blown out, which I guess people are like, oh, well, they get to play Messi. That's so cool. That's going to be push interest in their club or whatever. But I think the reality is they're going to have to put a lot more time, energy, and resources into a series that they pretty much have no chance at winning. And it's going to continue taking a toll for them in league play. I would honestly, Nico, tell me if you agree with this take. I would rather be in Seattle's situation getting bounced out than in that situation. I would. Maybe people think that that's crazy, but I think that it could end up impacting them even more negatively than it already has.
Man, I love you to death. I do. You my boy. You know you my boy. But I cannot get behind that, man. I feel like you need to get through every single game that you can to have a chance to stay alive. You say that is impossible task in Miami? I don't think so. I think that LAFC could very well plan a good way to limit Allende and limit Messi and play against the ball as well as they do and get a result. Maybe you push it. Maybe you get a 0-0 and then you able to, you know, finish that game on the second leg. I mean, there's just so many variables that, to me, and this I did have a problem with because I heard so many people, and I'm gonna try to contrast this because I heard so many people say, "Hey, you know what? It's fine. I'm glad that we got bounced out of CONCACAF Champions Cup because I hate that tournament and I don't really care. Let's focus on league play." Look, that's your take. That's your opinion. That's totally fine. But I did not get the memo that the Sounders were a team that wasn't in to win every tournament. I missed that memo, that we're just a small team now. And by we, I mean Sounders fan base, because that's not what I've seen. When I saw Nico Lodeiro pick up that trophy in 2022 for CCL at the time, my thought was, okay, here we go. Seattle's on the global scale. Now they're going to continue to push forward. It wasn't, we reached our peak, so let's just go ahead and have a chill down the slide, and then it doesn't matter what we do forward. So I don't like that sort of mentality. But I thought that the best person to articulate the idea was Stefan Fry this week, than just last week, after they got bounced off CCC. He said, look, we always want to win championships. We wanted to win that game. But if we were going to lose, I'd rather do it now against a team that is quality, because if we were not going to be able to get through Cruz Azul, then what's the point of getting any more resources behind it? So his idea is, look, I'm glad we played the best. I'm glad we played the best possible team in this round of the tournament, because if we were able to get through, then that means we were good. We should be moving forward.
Yeah.
But if we're not, then you know what? Let's just close it out there. And I feel like in that sort of analogy, Inter Miami played against Cavalier, and they had a pretty easy round, to be honest. But Columbus, they know dog. I mean, Columbus is still a good team, and LAFC did get through. They had some issues in the second game, but they still got through. So I feel like they're done enough to say, hey, we can get through Miami and move forward. But I'm never going to say it's always better to get bounced out regardless of.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want people like, I'm not saying that it's good to get bounced out, but I just think that you need to be cognizant of the reality that every series that you play in this tournament and all the energy and all the resources that you expend on this tournament, the longer you get into it, the more it takes out of you for the rest of the season. Like, I mean, we should not forget what happened to Seattle in 2022, man. They won the tournament, and that was phenomenal. That was the best thing an MLS club has ever done. It destroyed their league season. So when I look at LAFC from the outside, like, yeah, is it possible that they could beat Miami? Sure. And like, I'm sure everyone in their organization is chomping at the bit for that opportunity, as they should be. But I think the reality is that if they do lose that series, and if they lose it handily, which I think they're going to, we'll see what happens. I could be wrong about that. But in that scenario, they have expended a ton more of that energy and those resources on a task that ultimately turned out to be fruitless. And it could, I mean, we'll see what happens. It could be
it diminishes you. There's no doubt about that. I mean, we've seen it with Columbus Crew. We've seen it with the Philadelphia Union. We've seen it with every team that's gotten far, whether it's Leagues Cup or is CCC or CCL back then. That's what it is. It diminishes you every single time. There is minutes, it's management, it's a whole bunch of things that at times we would all love to say, hey, you know, I have enough of a big roster to play all these tournaments at the best of my abilities. But the reality is that you're going to have to prioritize one tournament over the other, because you're not going to be able to play your starting 11 every single week, every single day.
We got T-Baby with the follow-up on the super chat from earlier. Says, so the take that the Suazo take he was talking about was Jesus Ferreira needing a full supporting cast instead of being just a plug and play guy. So I think what he's getting at there is, if Ferreira, you know, I think we were all hopeful that a player of Ferreira's skill set would be like easily adaptable and be a plug and play, like you said. But do you think he's maybe actually more of a type of player that needs things built around him specifically in a particular way? And is Seattle set up to give him that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and I feel like that's the notion that we had of the player. Very talented. He's going to come in here and do a specific role, which at the time we believed to be finishing and being creative and being another person that could associate with either Albert or Jordan. The only problem with that is that necessarily hasn't been the case on how they started to use him. So I don't think anybody, and I don't know if you did, but I don't think anybody that I know said Jesus Ferreira is going to come here and be the new face of the franchise or be the new, you know, biggest player in the team. He was always going to be one of the pieces with a co-stellar group around him. Now, to his point, do they got to do more to fit his style of play? Perhaps, absolutely. And that was my issue with not seeing Albert, Jordan, Pedro, and himself, Ferreira, in one grouping. Brian told us that it was 3 positions for 4 of those players. Man, that's tough for me, right? Because if you bring in Jesus, you should be doing everything to try to maximize all your best players, all your best potential. And although it sounds good to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to always have one guy coming off the bench, either Pedro or Jordan or Ferreira. But man, it just seems like in a salary cap based league and in a team that you've kind of said, hey, we're in to win silverware in every competition, you want to have all your best players at one time. And whether you can do that or not, that's the difficult part. But I think that's part of the reason why the comment makes sense, because it hasn't felt that way. It's always felt like maybe he was just another piece rather than being a more emphasized part of the puzzle.
Yeah, some people might feel differently. I'm not out on Ferreira yet. Speaking for myself,
no.
I'm willing to give it more time.
Like
I said earlier, like a new player coming in like this, especially a guy who's going to be a key player, an adaptation period is normal, I think, and should be expected. In fact, like I said, man, it would be nice to be able to have done the plug and play and he just slots right in and looks like a best 11 player like he once was with FC Dallas right off rip. That's just not always how it works. So, I'm really not as concerned about his adaptation period as much as I just hope he doesn't keep letting his frustration get the best of him like he did in that St. Louis game, man. I really feel like the kind of headspace that he looked like out there, it looked like it was kind of too easy to get into his head, and it felt like it was detracting from his focus on winning the game, which that needs to be what you're locked in on at all costs when you're on that field. And it felt like he wasn't locked. That was my issue with it. Like, I don't know, but that could be projecting something from the outside, but like if you just looked at what he was doing on the field, that's what it looked like to me. So that's what I think that
no, 100%.
Yeah.
And it's all one big problem. I mean, that's the thing, that everything that we've just talked about, it all reflected itself within that game. And the adaptation component of it, I feel like it's been even slower in progression than it should have because of the way that he's been used. And I had asked a whole bunch of times, and people were asking me on X as well, and the big question was there a physical limitation to Jesus coming in? Because everybody heard about the U.S. men's national team, the reason why he came in sooner than he should have, and all of these things. But I haven't heard that from the team. I haven't heard that from Brian. And that is something that I want to make very clear, because if that's your thought of why maybe he's been slowly getting into this grouping, the team hasn't came forward and said that, hey, Brian could very easily, in one of my, 10 questions I've asked about Ferreira, say, hey, look, he's slowly getting better, but his condition is not quite there yet, or he has this nick, and that's why we're not using him. But they just haven't disclosed that. So all I can think of is that he's just a player that maybe you're just not rating at the moment, and you're kind of hoping that he comes in and plays certain situations. But Jordan's been the guy. And Albert's been the guy, and those are the players that you're always going to have there. Pedro and Ferreira have always been kind of a rotational component for Brian, and that's the big question. And I think that's the reason why he's had such a slow adaptation to the system, and why he looked frustrated, why he looked lost up there. I mean, that it all coincides.
Jake says our offense isn't creating chances, and that's a problem. 65% possession, one shot on goal is boring soccer and not atypical of the club.
That's one game.
Yeah, like I think the offense definitely was not great in this St. Louis game. No argument there. For me, like, having followed a lot of these seasons at this point, I've kind of learned what games should merit what expectations. I went into this game expecting it to be kind of a tough slog, grinded out type of game. I think there are circumstances that are just unfortunate, but reality, which is that you've traveled like 30K miles already this season. You just took 3 major injuries. You did this road trip on like a quick turnaround. Games like that in MLS, the reality is you, in those circumstances, you have to grind them out sometimes. Like, it would be ideal. It would be awesome to be able to go into a game like that under those circumstances and just play like Real Madrid and hang 3 to 5 goals on St. Louis and take an easy dub. It just doesn't, like, if you go into a game like that under those circumstances with those expectations, like, you're not, like, it's not going to go like that. Now, that, that being said, all that can be accounted for, and they should have been able to score a goal in this game, and they should have been able to take a result in this game. I'm just not aggrieved with that, as aggrieved about that, because I feel like they gave themselves a chance to take what I think would have been a good result. And I think in that situation, like, giving yourself a chance to get the point that's all you can ask for. And they got pretty close, I think. Like, I thought the last 15 minutes of the game, they were putting St. Louis under pretty consistent pressure. They were knocking it around in their end. They had a couple of good chances. And then the play on the penalty kick that got waved off, that's pretty unlucky. That's a borderline play. Like, Obed does a good job on that play to win what was a rightful penalty, but he got called for correctly. I think got called for the handball. So like, that is unfortunate. But when I look at that game, I see a game where they actually got decently close to gutting out what I think would, if they had taken a point in that game, I would have been happy with that result. And I don't think that is like lowering the bar in a way that lowers the standards of the team or the club or anything. I just think road games in MLS like that, especially on that long of a trip with as much travel as they've already done and 3 major injuries. That's the situation they were in.
Yeah,
So,
especially against a
maybe
very
that's
good
cope.
St. Louis
Maybe that's
team.
cope. That's just how I.
No. In a very good St. Louis team, you weren't playing, just
They look like one of the
easy
best
game.
teams in the league. Yeah, like
and to your point, the comment is about one game. I mean, I don't think chance creation has been an issue this season so far in the games that we've seen.
It wasn't against Charlotte. It wasn't against LAFC.
It wasn't against in the first leg against Cruz Azul. You created a bunch of chances. It wasn't good enough because you weren't able to put the ball in the back of the net, but you created a lot of chances. I mean, in most games this season, chance creation has not been an issue. Putting it away, managing the end of games, that's completely different. But I feel like the volume of opportunities have all been there. The results just haven't followed.
I think it's been, it's fair to say it's been a mixed bag so far. Like, I definitely don't agree with the premise that the offense has been terrible this year. I think there's been stretches of really, really good ball. I thought the Antigua series was great. I know the Charlotte game had a bad ending and a bad result, but I was pretty happy with how the attack played in that game. I was extremely happy with them dropping 5 goals on LAFC. I thought they looked great in that game. So, I think you got to acknowledge both the good and the bad that we've seen so far, because like the St. Louis game wasn't great. The Cruz Azul game was obviously a huge flop, but there has been good ball too. And my hope is that they, I don't expect them necessarily to drop 5 every game like they did against LAFC, but I think what they got to do going forward here is try and look closer to the team that we saw against LAFC than the one that we saw at St. Louis. Nico, we're coming up at an hour. We're at past an hour 10 here. Before we start wrapping it up and get out of here, let's just talk about this Houston game coming up real quick. It's the Nico Lodeiro revenge game. He's coming back to Lumen Field as a member of an opposing team. How are you feeling about this game in general, and also about the return of Nico Lodeiro to Lumen Field? Is he going to start?
I'm excited. I think he'll start. He started against RSL this weekend. I'm not done watching the entirety of the game just yet. I think I'm in the 66th minute. But I think that there's going to be a lot of headlines in this one. Most players coming back to a team where they are legendary, where they have done as much as Nico has done for the team, a lot of times might be mindful of not celebrating a goal or, doing that or the other. As much respect as I know that Nicolas Lodeiro has for this fan base, because that's probably the hardest thing that I remember talking to him about leaving. I do feel like he has a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
I feel like he feels like he was wronged by the club, especially because of his efforts to come back this season and then passing on him. So that's the biggest thing, is that it just happened. This was just a month ago that Nicolas Lodeiro did everything he could to return to Seattle, and Seattle said, nah, dog, we good. We're fine. Do your thing elsewhere. And he goes to Houston. So you're going to see Lodeiro at his best. I expect him to start, and I expect him to be at his absolute best. And if he scores, I wouldn't take bets on whether he celebrates it or not, man, because he could very much just go celebrate by the bench or something,
That's
by the opposing bench. I mean, it's one of those games where, man, it's going to be interesting.
If he gets one, I hope he does celebrate. I do. Like, I think I don't know the fine points of what went on behind the scenes, and if the way that he feels wronged makes sense or is valid. But if he feels that way and he gets one, I say that's fair play. Like, I think that he should handle it however he pleases for what he put in for this club. I think he earned the right to do that. We got another question in chat here as we wrap it up from Reese. Starting CBs with Bell playing well and the other 3 making mistakes. So I think he's asking who you would start at center back in this game, and like, should John Bell be a part of that given the defensive errors that we've seen from some other players so far this season?
No. With all due respect, JBL has put in solid shifts, but the starting center backs should be Yamar and Jackson Ragen in this one.
But what about in a maybe like a 3CB setup with Nuhu and Alex as the wingbacks?
We knew who was the wingback.
Well, I guess. Sorry, I know people probably would take issue with that character.
Yeah. That's a tough one. No, I still think that you don't change anything. JBL has been good. I think he is a player that can come in, put in a good shift. I think that I like his conservative play, specifically from the back end. I like his recovery speed. There's a lot of good things that I like about what he does. He's very good on set pieces as well. Despite him not being the biggest guy, I think he reads the ball well. But even then, I think that you stick to what has worked. I'm all about continuity. So whether it's 3 or 2, the build is always going to be 3. To me, it's got to be Jackson, Yamar, and Jay Bell. And that's another one. Whenever you build out of the back with 3, and whenever you do play a 3-man lineup, Jackson's always in the middle. Jay Bell, because he's a left-footed player, you'd rather just have him there. I think that's what they've decided on. And I always think that Jackson looks best right in the middle of those 3. And I'm not saying that's why the mistake happened, but he just never looks as comfortable, in my opinion, as he does in the middle of those 3. So because of that, and I do want to highlight Jackson Ragen's passing ability and what he does on the build out, regardless of the mistakes that he's had and the anomalies, I still think that the best bet is for you to go there with him.
Nico, let's call it a wrap right there. Thank you, everyone, as always, so much for tuning in to another banger stream. We're having a lot of fun with these Lobbing Scorchers kickoff episodes, and we're going to keep bringing them to you all season. So keep tuning in. Shill, real quick, like the video, sub to the channel, follow us on Instagram. I'm probably missing a bunch of stuff, but I'll get to it at some point. A shout out and thank you so much to Lee Nguyen for coming on the show this morning. If you came in late and missed that interview, definitely rewind this, go back, check out that interview. It was great stuff from him. Hopefully we can get him back on the show sometime. And podcast coming out later today. Be streaming on Thursday night for Under the Lights. And we're going to keep the
Make sure you support our sponsors. Make sure you support the sponsors.
Support the sponsors, Hacks and Ferments, Full Pull Wines, and Podium Menswear. Thanks for the reminder on that, Nico. Code LS for Hacks and Ferments. If you use our code, you get a free hot sauce with your order. So you can't beat that. It's really good hot sauce.
I got to get that.
All right. I think that's it. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Catch you next time. Don't want to give money to the oligarchs, but love Lobbing Scorchers? Do we have a deal for you? MLS Season Pass is back on Apple TV with access to every single MLS match, including Leagues Cup and the entire Audi MLS Cup playoffs with no blackouts. It's not just the games, you get total access to the pre- and post-match MLS 360 whip-around show in both English and Spanish, and get live look-ins and highlights from around the league, as well as full match replays and recaps. Now, you can support our show by visiting lobbingscorchers.com/Apple TV to purchase your subscription and support our show.
Lobbingscorchers.com/Apple TV. Please, don't let the oligarchs win.